Hello. Yeah, so I have to mention that I normally work with my partner, Ruth Jarman, and we work together as Semiconductor, as an artist duo. We've been working together for about 20 years. And we didn't start off working with science or with technology, but we were interested in working with the computers, which is why we came up with the name Semiconductor and the idea that the computer is another member of our group. And the computer was always aestheticizing our work, adding a digital feel to the work. And so we started making work that was exploring the nature of the medium of the technology. And eventually we started expanding into thinking about the natural world and how that becomes mediated through digital technologies. We ended up starting to use seismic data and other types of scientific data that allowed us to view and think about the extended world of nature beyond our everyday perceptions. And as soon as we started working with science, we realized that science was creating a mediated experience of the natural world. And so we were very interested in how you could actually experience nature through a scientific veil, as it were. And so we ended up applying to open calls for science residencies, and our first great opportunity was working at a NASA Space Sciences lab, where we learnt about magnetic fields and the Sun-Earth relationship. And hopefully there's a film that's showing called Heliocentric. There we go. If you could just skip forward a minute. And we made a lot of work where you could create experiences of what the scientists were talking about philosophically and technically. And in this piece, for example, Heliocentric, we took the idea of the sun being at the center of the solar system, and we've all taken for granted the idea that it's the Earth rotating and that the sun stays still. But we also all know that it used to be the other way around. We used to think that the sun was going around the Earth, and yet we've never done an experiment. How many people in the room have actually done an experiment to test whether that's true? But we know it's true because we believe science. And we wanted to actually create an experiment, a piece of work that actually showed what was actually going on. So in this animation, we created a time lapse of the sun, where the sun stays at the center of the image and the Earth rotates around. And so we created an experience of a scientific idea that we take for granted. And so many of our works build on a kind of underlying scientific philosophical approach, but also we often work with scientific data and, in a way, take it out of context to create a humanized experience where you experience nature and science and the technology to look at nature. So often when we've done residencies in labs, we have to go in with specific ideas. It's the only way you get a residency is by saying you have a really good idea that sells it to the panel. But when you get there, you have to have a completely open idea, because you don't know what's going to be interesting and you're going to aim at. So it's very important to have a kind of split personality in that sense. So we ended up knocking on scientists' doors, and they're always too busy and they never find time for you, but they've always got half an hour now. And so scientists are always open up and always want to talk to you if you ask them the right question about their work. So you have to do your homework and you have to knock on their doors, and they'll welcome you in, and they'll be really interested if you ask them the right questions. So you do a bit of homework, and it's always got to be now. And we were knocking on the doors of Nobel Prize winners, very scary thing, because they always know infinitely more than you, even about your own work. But it was really inspiring to learn how to engage with scientists in this way. And now the normal art-science relationship, which many people here probably have worked with, is more of a collaboration, or the idea of a collaboration. I don't really believe that ever happens. I don't believe the scientists ever get anything out of the art that relates to their actual scientific practice. But of course, the artists get lots out of the science to do their artistic practice. What we hope the scientists get out of it in exchange is a new perspective of their work, that someone finds a different kind of product, a different way of making something with their data, with their work. Could you skip to the other film, please? And so I'm now going to show just a little bit of a film called Black Crane. And this is, a scientist approached us after seeing some of our other work after our space sciences lab residency. And he said, I've got this amazing data that I really like your work. Would you like to work with this data? And we've all, before this film, we'd all seen images of the sun that the scientists would put on the website from SOHO satellite, where they'd all be artificially coloured and they'd all be cleaned up. They'd have all the noise removed and they'd be artificially coloured related to the wavelengths of light that the scientists are interested in. And we went back to the source of the data and we put together this film, which is from a pair of satellites called Stereo that are looking at the solar wind. And we kept all the artifices and all the things that were removed, like this is the satellite orientating itself, and this is the Earth and the Moon moving away from the satellite. And the scientists don't need any of this. This is all just thrown in the bin, this data. But of course, to the artist, this is wonderful material. It's really beautiful and really engaging. And after we made this work, that's the moon going around the sun, and then this is a lens flare. And all this stuff, no one would have ever seen it if we hadn't have worked with it. And so after we made this work, we put it on our website, on the internet, and it was seen by many people, including the BBC. And the BBC went straight to the scientists for, they wanted to use this material for a new TV series called One of the Solar System with Brian Cox, who's now a kind of the big TV star on the BBC science programs. And they wanted to use this data, so they've asked the scientist says, no, that's Semiconductor's data. They've decided how it looks, how it should look, what it's actually like. And so BBC were told to come to us and ask for our permission and paid us to use our work in their TV show. Thank you. And so after this, that you'll now notice that nearly all the BBC science documentaries will try and have data that looks like this raw data and not like the old artificially colorized processed data. And it's an aesthetic thing that only an artist could have brought to, out into the open. And so the scientists have got something in return that's in a way to do with outreach, but it also creates a kind of legacy that they see their work being appreciated in a new way. And so anyway, so we're about to do the CERN residency, and we've got a very specific idea to do with the language and the nature of how particle physicists have to create metaphors and a whole new way of a whole new kind of visual language and metaphors, just to explain things that are incomprehensible. And so we're going to be studying that, but we're also hoping to get our hands on lots of forgotten media and stuff that will be sitting in the back of cupboards, and we really don't know what we're going to find yet. So that's our plan. Okay, thank you.